You know the feeling. You sit at your desk, open a textbook, and instantly a wave of physical dread and mental fog hits you. It is a heavy, paralyzing sensation, and it is usually misdiagnosed as sheer laziness. This paralysis is a mechanical system failure, an overloaded nervous system known as the exam pressure crisis. The psychological pain you feel originates from three specific invisible blockers operating in the background of your mind: perfectionism, past academic trauma, and crushing external expectations. To bypass this anxiety and get your focus back, we have to look at the hunting habits of a specific predatory fish, the tragic life of a famous author's son, and the practical engineering of dirt roads. Mapping these psychological forces allows you to address the specific friction slowing you down and rebuild a study routine that actually holds. Let's start with your past academic failures. In 1873, an experiment was conducted that explains how the brain processes classroom humiliation. A researcher placed a predatory pike fish into an aquarium. On the other side of the tank, separated by a thick, clear glass partition, were dozens of tiny fish, the pike's natural prey. Hungry, the pike fish charged at the prey, slamming headfirst into the invisible glass. It tried again and again, breaking its nose and bruising its body. Eventually, the pike fish associated the small fish with intense physical pain, and it completely gave up trying to eat them. Here is the tragedy of the experiment. The researcher eventually removed the glass partition. The tiny prey swam freely around the pike, even brushing against it. But the trauma was hardwired. The pike fish would literally starve to death surrounded by food, entirely convinced that trying to eat would cause it pain. Your brain records every classroom snap or failed test as a literal collision with glass. Now, when you see a textbook, your nervous system triggers a protective reflex to shield you from that repeat pain. The second blocker involves the paralyzing weight of external expectations, and it is best illustrated by the legendary author John Steinbeck. Steinbeck reached the absolute pinnacle of literary success. He won the Pulitzer Prize and was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. He cast a massive, intimidating shadow over his family. His son Thomas felt utterly crushed by the pressure to match his father's greatness. Steinbeck even wrote the novel East of Eden, specifically for his boys, explicitly telling them they did not need to follow his path. Despite his father's advice, Thomas absorbed the societal pressure anyway. He referred to himself as a dancing bear in a circus, paralyzed by the weight of his last name, turning to alcohol and unable to produce his own meaningful work for decades. Trying to fulfill an idealized standard creates an impossible metric. Whether set by your parents, by your society, or by yourself, demanding greatness right out of the gate guarantees academic paralysis. The third blocker happens when students fatally misinterpret their teachers. A teacher might tell you to learn a concept perfectly, meaning they want you to understand the logic behind the facts. Students hear something completely different. Because of perfectionism, a student will sit down and refuse to advance to Chapter 2 until Chapter 1 is completely memorized without a single error. This rigid approach fails because early learning is inherently chaotic. Grasping 100% of the context on a first read is biologically impossible. Your brain needs to see the whole map before it can memorize the individual streets. Demanding a flawless first pass through new material forces the brain to process too much at once, leading directly to the overwhelm that makes students abandon a subject entirely. To dismantle these three blockers, you have to build your study engine around a single optimizing metric: consistency. First, to address the pike fish trauma, you have to hunt for mini-wins. Set a goal to understand just one paragraph, or even part of a single math equation. Hitting that tiny target allows your brain to associate studying with progress instead of pain. Next, to address perfectionism, you need to build the dirt path. Read the chapter imperfectly. If you only grasp 50% of the material, that is fine. Drop a few mental markers along the way and force yourself to walk all the way to the end of the chapter. You can always come back with a bulldozer on your second pass to pave the road and refine the details. But the absolute priority of your first pass is completion. Feeding your brain micro-rewards and intentionally allowing your progress to be messy are the required mechanical steps for building long-term academic endurance. Finally, to defeat the Steinbeck Syndrome and neutralize external pressure, You have to master the art of strategically lowering the expectations of your family and peers. When someone asks about your progress, intentionally downplay it. If you are actually moving fast, tell them you are struggling a bit and taking it slow. This creates an invisible psychological shield. It gives you the breathing room to work at your own pace, removing the anxiety of having to perform for their idealized version of you. And as you maintain this consistency, if the rigid path of rote memorization ever gets too boring, it is entirely okay to wander into the flowers. Go watch an engaging video or ask an AI to explain the backstory of a concept to regain your momentum. Studying to build a durable habit matters more than chasing a perfect score or satisfying someone else's expectations. Each day you show up, even with messy notes and half-understood concepts, you are training your brain to stay in the chair.